So by taking part in the meeting, you consent to the use of your personal data for the purpose of this meeting and to it being recorded. So, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding to welcome the Chairman and Vice Chairman of the Council.
I would like now to invite my chaplain, Marge Mattox, to present us with a prayer. Thank you.
So when I was preparing for this yesterday, I was reminded of some words from Hebrews, the book in our New Testament. And it says this: "And let us consider how we may spur on one another in love and in good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another." So let us pray. God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our districts. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service. Remind us that we are stewards of your people. Guide us to be the leaders your people need. Help us to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us, and to treat all persons, no matter how weak or poor, with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with your strength and your peace, and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human race. We ask this. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mark. Members, you may now sit. Thank you. So, members, that brings us to item 1 on the agenda. Do we have any priority business, Mr. Haywood?
Chairman, I can confirm there's no priority business this evening.
Thank you. Item number 2, minutes. The minutes of the meeting of the Council held on 20 December 2022 are before you tonight at page 1 of the pack. Is it your wish that I confirm and sign the minutes of the Council held on 20 December 2022? Thank you so much. Which brings us to item 3. Are there any apologies this evening, Mr. Haywood?
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillors Bourke, Lawrence, Fisher, Benton, Spencer, Upton, Councillor John Raven, Councillor Henry Williams, Councillors Mrs Holmes, Councillor Mrs Raven, Councillor Mrs Kath Berry.
Thank you. We now move to item 4 on the agenda, and I would like at this point to pass over to the monitoring officer, Mrs. Foulkes, who has a matter to deal with. Mrs. Foulkes.
Thank you, Chairman. As members be aware, the substantive item on the agenda this evening is the setting of the budget and the MTFS. Just to make it clear that members don't need to declare an interest in that as council taxpayers. There is in effect a standing dispensation for all members for the setting of the council tax.
Thank you, which leads me to ask the question, do we have otherwise any declarations of interest this evening? I think not. Thank you, members. Which brings us to item 5 on the agenda, Questions under Council Procedure Rule 11.4. Can I pass again to Mr. Haywood?
Chairman, I can confirm there are none.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haywood. And that brings us to item 6. We now have the report of the Leader of the Council, which can be seen from page 5 onwards in your agenda pack. Can I call upon Councillor Lees to present the report? Councillor Lees.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members. This will be the last scheduled meeting of the current full council, and therefore I begin by thanking all the members for their work and camaraderie over the last 4 difficult years. However, I would like to start the meeting on a positive note with the excellent peer review, which states that this is a very impressive, well-run, financially stable council, which is clearly focused on the delivery for the communities of South Staffordshire. Moving on. If I can get the computer to move up. The Council is rightly proud of this achievement and remains focused on ensuring ongoing improvements. Turning to corporate, my report, as in the papers before you, and which I'll take any questions on at the end. But as it's the last meeting, I'd like to look back over the last 2 very challenging years. However, over this time, there has been many developments too, which continue to support our communities across the district, which I'd like to draw your attention to. These are, we've distributed £15 million in grants to local businesses, integrated climate change initiatives into our all new policies, managed development of a cost-neutral, fantastic new community hub on time and within budget, reduced fly tipping. By prudent management, financial management, we have maintained a value for money council, the lowest in Staffordshire and the 5th lowest in the country. But these are just a few. But of the 92% of our residents saying they would recommend South Staffordshire as a great place to live, and the icing on the cake was being awarded for the very prestigious honour of Council of the Year. Hope you agree. Although challenging, we have not rested on our laurels, which we all need thanking for. If there's any questions, I'll take them now.
Councillor Allen, I believe you have a question.
Just briefly, this is a question about the elections actually, because looking at the new warding arrangements, we haven't had through the parish council office or ourselves any new parish council seat allocations for the new wards in our district. So this applies to Great Worley, Penkridge, Purton and Wombourne. And I think we need to know now how many seats are in each ward. There's nothing in the paperwork that I find. Thank you.
I'll call Mr. Haywood to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. We've actually got our first candidates and agents meeting tomorrow evening, where there'll be packs distributed, but everything you've just referred to is actually on our website. It can be accessed via there. Thank you, Chairman.
Do we have any other questions at this stage?
I'll now call on the Planning and Business Enterprise, Mr. Mason, Councillor Mason.
Thank you. You have my report in front of you, starting on page 8. It starts with the local plan, and before anybody decides to ask any questions, I thought I'd clarify a couple of issues on it. I know many members and many members of the public would love me to turn around and say we aren't going to use any of our green belt whatsoever, in common with people like Wolverhampton and Dudley who've made such a statement. However, I would point out that they have approximately 10% of their land as green belt, and to be quite honest, they can quite flippantly make such a remark for whatever reason they feel like making it. South Staffordshire has 80% green belt, and it has 10% open countryside. And I'm sure you members, in common with me, have just as much difficulty as members of the public in recognising what the difference is between greenbelt and open countryside. So as far as they're concerned, 90% of what we've got is greenbelt. I can't recommend to you that we make a statement regarding what we are going to do with our greenbelt. We have several things in the government's consultation which require great clarification. One is they're removing the duty to cooperate. They're replacing it with an alignment test. We need clarity that alignment test just doesn't mean duty to cooperate under a different name. I appreciate that duty to cooperate should go two ways. And why should we cooperate with people who are taking all their greenbelt out of their plan? I sympathise very greatly with those views, and believe me, they will be taken into account when we reach the point in time of making any recommendation. The other point that needs clarification is no obligation to remove greenbelt to afford housing. Again, I'd say that's an easy thing to turn around and argue against when you've got 10% greenbelt. When you've got 80% plus greenbelt, that's not something that I can recommend to members that we take a flippant approach on. The only thing I can reassure you is we will not be submitting the local plan during this council, and we will not be submitting the local plan until we are satisfied with the clarity arriving from those responses. I'm hoping that that will answer the question that many members in the room and many members listening to this meeting will have. But if there are any further questions on my report or on that, I'm perfectly happy to take them.
If there's no questions to Councillor Mason, we'll move on to the regulatory services. Rita Heseltine.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, officers and members. As is usual, this report contains all the relevant information, but there are just a few items which I would like to highlight. The Environmental Health team continue their work to inspect and rate businesses for food hygiene. Those businesses which are broadly compliant is currently at 94%. This equates to them being awarded a food hygiene rating of 3, 4 or the highest rating of 5. New unrated and awaiting inspection businesses yet to receive a rating are automatically counted as non-broadly compliant by default. It's reassuring to note that the high compliance rate means that businesses overall have maintained good standards. This in spite of the difficulties posed by COVID in the recent past and the current cost of living crisis. It's good to see that 2 part-time food contractors are now assisting the team with inspections. The Council's food service plan for 2022-2023 reflected the FSA recovery plan, and currently we're in line to achieve the targets set. Over the past 2 months, the team have received 32 complaints regarding housing conditions. These vary in nature and as such relate to a wide variety of issues and concerns. The team are currently prioritising concerns or complaints regarding damp and mould. Where repairs or works are required, details of procedure can be found on page 11. It's reassuring to note that officers are providing advice to residents as necessary regarding actions which can be taken to reduce condensation within properties, as this can lead to mould growth and staining. 60 compliance visits were made to licensed premises over the last quarter, and almost 400 licences were issued of various types to licensed premises in South Staffordshire during the last calendar year, and 17 of these were for new premises licences. Our arrangement with Wolverhampton delivering our licensing function continues to be successful. The latest update report advises that compliance visits have been undertaken during every month of the last quarter across all localities. Greater detail can be found on page 11. 5 CCTV cameras are now operating across the district. Locations have been recommended by police data and intelligence. December showed a small decrease in fly tipping over the same period in 2021 and also in 2020. Overall, in 2022, we achieved a reduction in fly tipping figures from 2021 of almost 5%. See pages 17 and 18. There are some ongoing investigations. Legal have served summons for one case and have a court date in March for a Locality 3 fly tip. We're also due to serve summons for a Locality 5 fly tip imminently. I really can't stress enough how much work and effort this team put into making South Staffordshire a safe and pleasant place in which to live and work. For much of the time they've been understaffed, but have still managed to fulfil their obligations. Recruitment has been difficult. Throughout the COVID pandemic, environmental health officers were as rare as hen's teeth, but the team persevered with their workload and completed all that was required. It's good to see that fly tipping figures have decreased, in fact, bucking the national trend, which is something we should be proud of in this district, and that there are ongoing investigations, a court date and a summons due to be served. It's also encouraging that there are now witness statements too. Perhaps the one fly tip is one fly tip too many is beginning to get through at last. So, once again, my thanks to all concerned in a team I am proud to be associated with. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
No questions I can see. So we'll move on to business transformation. Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all well. From business transformation, my report is, as it says, just a few highlights to be able to bring on is the fact that, first of all, I'd like to pay tribute to the team underneath Andy Hoare and Sue and everybody in the IT team who have now managed to produce what I consider to be an absolutely fantastic new website. I've been fortunate enough to go through it today, and not only is it more inclusive than I've ever seen anywhere else, but I think it's also going to be a huge standard increase for most councils around the country. With that, as you can see with the business hub, the IT that we have put in here now has enabled the work to continue throughout the COVID pandemic, but now is making sure that our residents can see us and see what we're doing and make sure that we're doing the right thing. And that's why I'd also like to pay tribute to Pete and John, who have made sure that we have kept our budget within green on every single rag rating all the way through, which has been an absolute brilliant job, especially with infrastructures and inflation as it's gone with IT. Overall, Mr. Chairman, I have to say that we are absolutely great on business transformation. The teams have worked really hard, and I don't think we could do any better. But any questions, please answer. Happy to answer. Thank you.
No questions to Councillor Williams. Move on then. Welfare Services, Councillor Robert Reid.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and members. My report, as you have in front of you, is a statement of the situation as far as the collection rates, which is, as you are well aware, a good indicator of the financial position that people are in. So that is one that we watch carefully. It's important to note that the lower income population are being looked after by revs and bevs to ensure that they're able to manage the finances. People perhaps that have never had a budget, that they have to learn how to budget to overcome the difficulties. And I think that the other point is that we are continually keeping our eye on these people and monitoring them and advising them as we see fit. think it was a disability facility grants. We're changing our programme in the 31st of March. And as you can see in the report, we've got a shared service with Stafford Borough Council. I hope this will be a lot more successful than previous way that we were working. But it is an important changeover, and what we've been trying to do is avoid as much as possible any carryover work from the present contractors to the new, the 1st of April. As you can appreciate, the last thing you want is somebody else to come and finish somebody else's work. So that's been a priority, to make sure that what we've taken on can be, as good as much as possible, be completed. There is also provision for some priority work, so that if we feel that that priority work can be done before the 31st of March, it will be. And that's only small, probably, adjustments to whatever they've had fitted, and they need some kind of adjustment. So the main issue is to clear the deck, which is going to be quite difficult, but we're trying to get as much done as we can. Under welfare support, you'll note there's a link there, and I think it's well worth, councillors, having a look at that, because inside there you'll find a list, and that list will be very useful for you when you're approached by members of the public, and it's a good guideline. So I recommend you have a look at that. Finally, I'd just like to add my thanks to the tremendous work that the teams have been doing over this difficult period. Working in different ways, working from home. Sometimes it's not suitable for some, especially if the kids are on holiday, but they've adjusted tremendously, and we've got to be very grateful for how they've distributed all the grants that the government have given us, and making sure that they've gone to the right people for the right place. And we've pretty satisfied that that's gone through quite well. And again, these discretionary grants, those are the ones, and they've worked hard to make sure that anybody eligible has been dealt with fairly. So I think it's just acknowledging the tremendous amounts of work that we see our staff doing, right from the reception area right into the back offices. So I do applaud what they've done. That completes my report, Alan. Any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you. Just a quick question, please. I see we've only used 75% of the budget with the adaptations for the disability. Is that because there's a lack of applications or a lack of assessments for them? Thank you.
I didn't quite catch what you were saying, Penny. If you just speak into that microphone a little more instead of turning towards me.
I'm asking about why we've only used 75% of the budget, please, Robert. I can see that the budget was over £1 million and we haven't used it all. I'm just wondering, is there a lack of applications for this budget or a lack of assessments for those applications? Thank you.
I presume you're talking about the £25 that we're going straight into their rates. Is that the one you mean?
Disabled facilities.
Yeah.
Please, thank you. This is about the disability facilities grants, Robert. I'm looking at the total that we had for that. We've only spent 75% of that budget. I'm just asking if there's a lack of applications for the budget or whether those applications have not been assessed.
Oops, I'll get the mic on as well. Yes, I think that if we have any surplus or monies left, it will be spent because there's a need for it. It's just that we're talking about the changeover and we're not wanting to go into new contracts until we're satisfied that they can be completed, which of course that's going to go back into 22 now. So we've held back on new applications unless, as I pointed out, there was a priority for somebody. And you can appreciate that the last thing we want is a lot of unfinished work. There's nothing worse than having to get someone else in to finish somebody else's work. So this is what we've been trying to avoid. It won't be impossible, but that's what we're trying to achieve. It's that changeover.
If there's no further questions, I'll move on to community services and land base. Councillor Bates.
Thank you. Good evening, members. This evening, I want to talk to you about a number of good news stories. I'd like to start off with waste and recycling. And we have over 30,700 subscribers to the Garden Waste Collection Service. This is one of the highest rates in the country, and that stands at 69%. 7,800 tonnes of garden waste collected and composted here in the right area, Coven, just down the road. 7,500 tonnes of dry recycling have been collected, processed for recycling on our doorstep at Aldridge. 19,000 tonnes of general waste have been collected and delivered to an energy recovery facility right here in Four Ashes. It's been turned into electricity for the national grid. Introduction of a dual stream recycling service for all residents, with paper and card collected separately for glass, cans and plastics. Our year-to-date recycling rate currently stands at 45.26%, compared to the most recently published national average of 42.08. Moving on to the street scene. The team have carried out a substantial amount of work on 40 sites in the district in partnership with the County Council, cutting back hedges, reintroducing overgrown pathways to a very high standard. Moving on to leisure centres, memberships have increased from 3,091 to 3,251 this year. The team are working hard to return to pre-COVID membership levels. It is more important than ever that we do all we can to facilitate the well-being of our residents, both physically and mentally, by providing them with high-quality facilities for exercising and indeed socialising. Top international athletes raced through the roads of South Staffordshire District when we hosted the Commonwealth Games trial event. Moving on to climate change, South Staffordshire Climate Prize awarded funding to a total of 21 winners for climate mitigation projects as part of the Climate Change Festival. The winners included parish councils, friends groups, schools and charities who have made a massive impact on the local area, Projects included new nesting boxes, repair cafe, water collectors, bulb planting, energy efficient building works, river sampling, heathland development, and our own climate change project at Kingswood Trust, to name but a few. More than 20 school children from across the district took part in the Youth Climate Committee, the first of its kind for the council. The next generation of environmentalists were bursting with ideas how to preserve the planet when they joined the Climate Change Committee at South Staffordshire Council. The council was named a net zero leader in getting set for low carbon future by a major UK energy distribution firm, Western Power Distribution. Continuing to work with landowners and the Forest of Mercia to facilitate tree planting, and some 1,000 plus trees have been planted in the district during the last 12 months. This completes my report. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. If there's no further questions, Mr. Chairman, that completes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. This brings us on to item number 7 in your pack, where we should turn to page 21. We now have a report from the chairman of the committees giving a brief update to the council on what has taken place in their committee since the last council meeting. I should say that these reports are in the pack, and I am inclined to invite any committee chairman who wishes to speak to indicate now. Sorry, Councillor Kinsey, please give your report.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a very brief one from me. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee last met on the 31st of January, where we scrutinised the MTFS report. That attracted quite a considerable amount of attention and questions throughout the evening, which I think members attending would all agree was substantial scrutiny indeed. Ranging from the very technical right up to more sort of general questions on our financial situation. I'd like to thank Mr. Shakespeare for delivering that report and for responding to the number of questions he had to carry away as well, so thank you for that. I'd also like, just if I may, Chairman, just take the opportunity to express my sadness and a degree of regret, it must be said, which relates to one of our agenda items. The work programme is a constant item on at Overview and Scrutiny, and I'm just slightly regretful that it isn't treated in the sexy and engaging way that I know, and I think all members here know it to be. Thank you, Chairman.
Given that you've all had an opportunity to read all these reports, I do wish to ask again if there are any further questions for the committee chairman. I think not. That brings us on to item number 8. The next item, this item number 8, is a report regarding the recent urgent action decision taken by the Chief Executive. Can I call upon the Monitoring Officer, Mrs. Fox, to present the report, which can be seen at page 25, Mrs. Fox.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this is just the requirement within the Constitution to report to Council in respect of any urgent action decision that has been taken. Members will be aware that in January of this year, the Chief Executive exercised the urgent action powers in respect of a leave of absence under Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. That decision is appended to the report, and as I say, the report is brought before members this evening to comply with the constitutional requirement, and is merely for noting by members. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Fox. This is a matter upon which we have to agree to note the report. Do we have a proposal for that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose the council accept the urgent action taken by the Chief Executive Officer.
And a seconder, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll happily second that.
Members, are you content to note the report? Verbal response will suffice. Thank you very much indeed. This brings us to item number 9, which is without question the main item of this meeting. We should now turn to page 31 in the pack. The report is that dealing with budget setting. Can I now call upon the Leader of the Council, Councillor Roger Lees, to present the report? Councillor Lees, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report presented before you this evening is the culmination of many months of work from officers of the Council. This report sets out the medium-term financial strategy for the period 23-24 through to 27-28. In forming this budget, members have been fully briefed and have opportunity to comment on budgetary assumptions before. Had any opportunity to comment before and during the public consultation in January of this year. Before I pass to Mr. Spakeshire to take you through the key parts of the report, I would like to emphasise that it once again been a year of challenges. Lasting impact of inflation, energy and construction costs necessitates the need to be prudent and act with responsibility. We as a district council have always had a strong focus on financial prudence, and as such we are well placed to face the next period of financial challenge. Our peer review completed towards the end of 2022 confirmed we are a well-run authority and enables us to once again propose a balanced budget for 23-24. However, the achievement of the balanced budget does require a draw on our reserves. In line with many other local authorities, we're now proposing that for the 23-24, the district council tax increase by £5. The annual increase for the standard Band D property would be an equivalent of 8 or 9 pence per week. As an authority, we continue to review our own ways of working and how best we can work with partners to endorse the best services to our community. The following from the successes such as the Community Hub, a programme of delivery not only on time and action in budget, but ensuring that we have a community-based facility for many years to come and increase income as the result of the redevelopment and the ways of working. Moving forward, we continue to invest in our communities across the district and the small-scale schemes to broader economic projects such as the West Midland Interchange, I-54 extension and ROF Featherstone. Thank you for your continued support of the contribution to the work of the Council. I now pass to Mr. Shakespeare to take you through the delivery of the broader aspects of this report. Mr. Shakespeare.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. The report before you sets out the medium-term financial strategy for the period of 2023-24 through to 2027-28. The projected revenue expenditure for the current financial year of 22-23, revenue estimates for 23-24, and the capital programme for 23-24 through to 27-28. Under Section 32 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, the Council has a legal obligation to set a balanced budget. The proposals before you present a balanced budget for a 3-year period to the financial year 25-26. However, it should be noted that a balanced budget is achieved with the use of reserves. The Local Government Finance Settlement was announced on December the 19th, 2022, the relevant contents of which have been fully incorporated into this report. It is proposed that members make use of the flexibility to increase council tax by £5 and utilise 1.772 million of general fund reserves in the financial year 23-24. In forming this MTFS, members have been fully briefed and had opportunity to comment on budgeted assumptions. Cabinet members have been engaged and briefed by officers and officers of the Council with support from finance colleagues. I don't propose to read the report to you verbatim, but I would like to pick out pertinent parts for members' awareness. Section 6 of the MTFS sets out the prior year MTFS as set by yourselves in February 2022. Since the previous MTFS, the final outturn position for 2021-22 represented a £345,000 improvement on the budgeted position. The outturn position for the current year, 22-23, is forecast to be around a £100,000 improvement against the original budget approved by Council. Section 7 sets out the updated 23-24 budget and the updated MTFS for the period of 23-24 through to 27-28. It also reconciles the previous MTFS to the updated MTFS and explains key movements between those 2 years. Summarises the key assumptions and highlights key areas of risk. The MTFS has been updated to model the impact of changes in assumptions, budgetary pressures, reductions in funding and further savings. Table 2 within this section sets out how the Council's expenditure profile will be met by a combination of external funding and use of reserves over that period. General reserves are forecast to remain above the minimum level set, which is continued at 1.5 million, until partway through the financial year 26-27. The draft budget for 23-24 and the detailed draft MTFS is set out in full in Appendix 1. Table 6 tracks through the adjustments made to the MTFS since it was last approved in February of 2022. Members should note that pay and inflation assumptions are the main drivers of financial pressures and a key movement from the last reported position. Offsetting these pay and inflation pressures are movements within capital and treasury assumptions. A combination of the decision to lock in borrowing at historically low interest levels, the ability to invest surplus cash balances at higher interest rates, and a review of our statutory minimum revenue provision have all realised budget improvements. In addition, the delay to any review of local government funding methodology during the term of this Parliament has allowed a more realistic estimation of income from business rates to be profiled, along with greater clarity on grant funding for the next 2 years. Section 8 of the report details the current South Staffordshire tax base, the estimated growth in this tax base across the MTFS and the impact that this has on council tax receipts for the council. Section 9 details the capital programme and funding that will support the programme. The full programme details can be found in Appendix 3 to the report. Members will note a change to prior years in that the capital programme is now profiled across the MTFS period. Section 10 discusses reserves. In addition to the general fund balance, the Council also has earmarked reserve balances which are set aside for specific purposes. A critical and regular examination of earmarked reserves remains an integral part of the financial management of the organisation and an opportunity to strategically manage risks, pressures and opportunities. While developing the MTFS for its approval, it was clear that pay and inflationary uncertainties will persist into the coming year. As such, and as is detailed in the report, it is intended to continue to hold a specific reserve for pay and inflation to manage any future pressures that may emerge over that of budgeted assumptions. Finally, the COVID reserve will end this financial year once final spend commitments have been applied. Any remaining balances will be transferred to bolster the pay and inflation reserve. Taken together, these proposals present a balanced budget for a 3-year period to 2025-26. Further savings, increased income or additional government funding will be necessary to ensure above minimum levels of reserves are maintained over the 5-year term. That concludes my report, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare. Are there any questions to Mr. Shakespeare before I make the proposal? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just looking at the specific pay and inflation pressures. Mr. Shakespeare, thank you very much for your detailed written answers to the questions that were raised prior to this meeting. Since the government's looking at 3.5% at the moment for its pay awards announced today for some areas of the...
Excuse me, forgive me, Councillor Allen. I understand that we have made a little bit of a procedural mistake. in that the matter should have been proposed and seconded before we took the questions. It doesn't mean you're not going to have your question, but we do have to go through due process. Councillor Lees, please.
Sorry. Thank you. I would like to propose the Council's medium-term financial strategy 23-24 to 27-28 and 23-24 budget and move acceptance of the recommendations 2A, 2B, 2C and 2D on page 31 of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Do we have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
And now, I'm happy to invite questions. Councillor Allen, you're back.
Thank you. Just a brief question, really, Mr. Shakespeare, about the government announcing 3.5% that they're looking at from the pay review body today, and how significantly you think that will affect the table 14, where we have specific pay and inflation pressures reserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Profiled within the MTFS, as we discussed at overview scrutiny, is an assumption of a 5% pay award next year for council staff. Obviously, the figures that we've been talking about will be within that budgeted allocation already. Therefore, that wouldn't directly lead to a call pay and inflation reserve. Obviously, the pay and inflation reserve will be there for any pressures over and above that 5% level set, or for any of our contractual inflation and pressures that may emerge from that.
Are there any further questions, or on the other hand, does any member wish to speak by way of debate? I gather not. Therefore, we must now take a vote on this matter. Because it's a budget matter, there are legal protocols which must be followed. The main one being this will have to be a named vote. Therefore, I now must pass to Mrs. Fox, who will conduct the said named vote. Mrs. Fox, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll go through each member and ask whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. So Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Allen.
Sorry. For.
Councillor Barrow. Councillor Bates.
For.
Councillor Bolton. Councillor Bond. Councillor Boyle. Councillor Burnett. Councillor Kane. Councillor Chapman. Councillor Cope. Councillor Cox. Councillor M. Davis. Councillor P. Davis. Councillor Evans. Councillor Hewitt. Councillor Heseltine. For. Councillor Hingley. Councillor Hollis. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Johnson. Councillor Kinsey. Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Lockley. Councillor Mason. Councillor Merrick. Councillor Michelle. Councillor Perry. Councillor Reid. Councillor Sadler. Councillor Sisley. Councillor Steele. Councillor Sutton. Oh, sorry, Councillor's not here. Councillor B. Williams. Councillor D. Williams. Councillor K. Williams. Councillor Wilson. Motion's carried.
In that event, the motion is carried. And we now turn to item number 10, the chairman's announcements. I haven't too much to say other than that, as always, my consort, my wife Kirsten, and I continue to represent this council at various civic events around Staffordshire, and recently one in Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, which was utterly fascinating, I must say. I have to say also, though, that this whole business of being chairman of this council is a lot more demanding than you might imagine, having to turn up all these events and be polite to everyone and enjoy some social interaction. but it's a good experience and one which, on balance, I would most certainly recommend. However, I do have a main announcement to make, members. Those of you who have been paying attention will know that the civic dinner takes place on the 17th of March. I may say that in recent years, the turnout of members has tended to be somewhat disappointing, and I do hope that more of you than has been the case in the recent past will find it within your hearts to attend the civic dinner. I may say that my wife is making some strides and some efforts to make it a little bit special this year in a number of ways. I can't betray any of these secrets, but I would suggest it might make it that little bit more worthwhile you electing to partake in the event. So please do attend the event if you possibly can. The other thing that I would just say to you is that, as always, there will be refreshments both in the members' room and in the cafeteria area immediately following this meeting. And I do hope you'll be able to join together to enjoy that as well. That being the case, I now declare the meeting to be closed.
Please stand whilst the chairman and vice chairman leave the council chamber.